Oh, you think it's funny? You think it's hilarious that the Unitarian Universalists affirm and promote abuse of clergy? You're an asshole, sir, if you laugh at that. A real asshole, if you don't mind my saying so. What? I didn't hear that. But no, if you want to shake your head and pretend it's not true, you're just an idiot and a hypocrite. Yeah, I don't normally get a little irate. And I'm not yelling and screaming. I'm just like, you're an idiot, sir. If you look at that and you read it and you shake your head and you pretend it's not true, and you laugh, you literally laugh at a slogan that says, Unitarian Universalists affirm and promote abuse of clergy. Well, yes, you're an asshole. You're a hypocrite. You are in total denial, as these people are. These people are in total denial of the injustices and abuses that their church is responsible. I'm not here. I'm just an invisible person. They won't even look my way. They don't want to know the truth. They won't look at the slogans because in their minds it's all false. It's all untrue because they don't want to know the truth. They don't want to know that Unitarian Universalists have a bit of a clergy sexual misconduct problem. They don't want to know that Unitarian Universalists actually go so far as to falsely accuse people of criminal acts in an effort to cover up and hide the criminal acts of their own clergy. They're hypocrites. They are the classic, and I'm being polite here, I'm being very polite, this is the ostrich with the head in the sand. This is exactly what we're looking at here. When we see a Unitarian Universalist and he or she sees my picket signs or my chalk slogans and they shake their heads and laugh because they're dismissing it, well then they are two-faced hypocrites, because on the one hand they claim to believe in a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. They claim to believe in justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, but on the other hand they're not the least bit interested in knowing the truth about clergy misconduct in their church and about cover-up and denial of clergy misconduct in their church. They want to pretend that they're the righteous, good guys. They don't have a clergy sexual misconduct problem. They don't cover up and hide clergy sexual misconduct. No, we're the good guys. It's the other guys that do that. Well, of course, the other guys do that. The Catholic Church is famous for having a serious clergy sexual misconduct problem and going to pretty extreme lengths to cover up and hide clergy sexual misconduct. But you know what? Unitarian Universalists do the same thing. I'm not saying that there's as much clergy sexual misconduct committed by Unitarian Universalists. For starters, it's a much, thank you. Got a nice affirmative honk there. Unitarian Universalism. Hey, Missy. Okay, so very friendly advice from the taxi driver. It seems that when I dropped my picket sign and picked it up again, I picked it up upside down. So he was telling me my picket sign was upside down. So, basically helping me out a bit. Anyway, getting back to things. Yes, everyone knows that everyone knows that the Roman Catholic Church, has, a quite serious clergy sexual misconduct, which does involve a fair bit of pedophilia and even rape. And everyone knows that the Catholic Church, has tried to cover up and hide this until it got to the point where it's simply impossible for them to do so. And then, so at a certain point, they're just not able to hide it anymore. I'm sure there's still stuff they're hiding. But, they have to admit certain things as it's been proven to be true. And it's the same thing with the Unitarian Church. There's certain things that they're simply not in a position to deny. So they pretty well have to acknowledge that, well, yeah, we do have a little bit of a clergy sexual misconduct problem. But, we don't do this, we don't do that. And actually a good example of that, and a really, really incredibly shameful example of Unitarian Universalists lying about clergy sexual misconduct, I think one of the most shameful examples that there is that in June of 2014 at the General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association in Providence, Rhode Island, UUA moderator Jim Key stood up and delivered what was supposed to be an apology for clergy sexual misconduct. This apology came about because a previous Unitarian Universalist Association apology for clergy sexual misconduct had basically proven to be worthless. So basically, the upshot is that because the earlier apology, which was made in 2000, basically wasn't worth the breath it was spoken with, the UUA was basically pretty well forced to deliver a second institutional apology. Jim Key, who was elected in 2013, if I'm not mistaken, he was elected during the 2013 UUAGA. He was under considerable pressure to deal with the clergy sexual misconduct situation. Pressure not only from myself, but a fair number of other people. And, Jim, it's very clear to me that he just wanted to get it behind him, kind of. He didn't really want to do anything to truly fix the problem. It's very clear that there's things that, if he was really serious about dealing responsibly with Unitarian Universalist clergy misconduct problems, there's things that he would have done that he did not do. So that's a clear indication to me that he just wanted to put this behind him as quickly as possible and play down the situation as much as possible. So, less than a year after becoming moderator of the UUA Board of Trustees, in April, just a couple of months before the 2014 UUAGA, in April 2014, the board voted to deliver the second institutional apology. As I said, this had been requested, demanded for literally years. All of a sudden, just 2 months before the General Assembly, the board voted to deliver a second apology at the upcoming General Assembly in June 2014. So that's basically like 2 months to put together an apology. Now, an apology can be put together pretty quickly, but just that rapidity combined with other indications indicated to me that this was all about putting this behind us as much as possible, as quickly as possible. It really wasn't about dealing seriously with the problem. It wasn't about a genuine, apology that really addressed the issue and really moved towards justice for clergy sexual misconduct victims. And it was proven by, what Jim Key said in his apology. His apology was sandwiched into the middle of his moderator's report. So there was no special time set aside for delivering the apology. There was no special ceremony that was geared strictly to that apology. It was sandwiched into the middle of his moderator's report. And that right away is an indication that it really wasn't that serious. And worse than that, the first part of his moderator's report was full of self-deprecating humor stuff. So people were literally laughing and everything right up to the point where he switched into his apology. That's no way to lead into an apology. You don't get people laughing and ha ha ha, and then the next thing you do is you deliver an apology for clergy sexual misconduct. It's again just another indication that this was all about let's just get this behind us, So what does Jim say in the apology? Well, basically he just played it all down, minimized it as much as he could. Said only a small number of ministers were guilty of clergy sexual misconduct, when in fact, people who are in the know about these things have calculated that no less than 400 congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association have been affected by clergy sexual misconduct of one kind or another. Basically, where complaints were brought against the ministers. So there was like no less than 400 churches where complaints had been brought against the ministers, and some of these churches had 2 or more complaints against different ministers brought against them in the span of time that the UUA has been in existence. We're talking from like 1961 until nowish. 400 churches minimum, because they stopped counting. And other estimates say that as many as 2/3 or more of Unitarian Universalist churches have had a clergy sexual misconduct problem, one kind or another. But we're looking at a minimum of 400 to, let's say, 650 churches out of a total of around 1,000. So that's like a minimum of 40%, up to 60 or 70% of Unitarian Universalist congregations have had, a problem with clergy sexual misconduct at one time in the last 50 plus years. That's not a small number. It's just not a small number. But it was worse. He then went on to say, and this is an exact quote from his apology, there were no incidents of abuse of children or elders in my investigations. So what's he saying? What is Jim Key saying there? There were no incidents of abuse of children or elders in my investigations. Well, first of all, he's saying that he did investigate. He's saying he personally investigated Unitarian Universalist clergy sexual misconduct. And he's saying that in his own personal investigations of Unitarian Universalist clergy sexual misconduct, he found no evidence of any incidents of abuse of children or elders in those investigations. This is completely and utterly false. I personally told Jim Key about Reverend Mac Mitchell's rape of teenage Tibetan refugees. I personally told Jim Key that there were various cases of Unitarian Universalist ministers being charged, tried, and convicted of sexual abuse of children, pedophilia. And for every case that I know about, and for every case where someone was actually convicted, you can be damn sure there are others that you don't know about. The church, I'm sure, does. But the point I'm getting at is that for every publicly disclosed case of a Unitarian Universalist minister being a rapist or a pedophile or both, there are others where nobody was charged, tried, and convicted. The complaint was made internally within the church and essentially hushed up. There's definitely cases of that where the minister engaged in serious clergy sexual misconduct, but the church handled it internally. The person was never charged with any crime, and then thus never convicted of any crime. But the church knew about it. Church knew of a certain number of cases where ministers were guilty of sexual abuse of children, and yet Jim Key stands up in front of thousands of Unitarian Universalists, and in the middle of what's supposed to be an apology for clergy sexual misconduct, he denies the existence of a whole category of clergy sexual misconduct. He just says it never happened. That, quite frankly, besides being a bald-faced lie, is insane. It's truly insane. For Jim Key, or any other Unitarian Universalist leader for that matter, to, in the middle of an apology, pretend that no children were ever abused by Unitarian Universalist clergy, or at least I don't know about it, when in fact he did. Because if no one else in the whole Unitarian Universalist religious community told Jim Key about various cases of clergy sexual abuse of children, I did. I personally told him myself in a phone call and in emails. which were all about trying to get Jim Key to deal responsibly with the President Morales administration's false blasphemous libel accusation against me. In my efforts to have the UUA formally withdraw that accusation, and apologize for that accusation and tell the truth. That was one of my demands. It's like, you formally withdraw this accusation because it's false. You apologize for it, not just to me, by the way, because yes, this is a false accusation against me, so it has direct bearing on me, but in falsely accusing me of blasphemous libel in an effort to hide clergy sexual abuse of the worst kind, you owe an apology to your religious community for what you did, because this does not reflect well on your religious community. So I expect them to apologize to their fellow Unitarian Universalists. And yes, my third demand was that, since you made this false accusation, I expect you to publicly disclose exactly how many Unitarian Universalist ministers have in fact been charged, tried, and convicted of pedophilia and or rape. I'm sure I don't know of every case. You will also disclose how many credible accusations have been brought against Unitarian Universalist ministers for pedophilia and or rape. Because we all know that not every case goes to court, but the church is nonetheless aware of cases, and they cover this stuff up. They've actually been quite successful in covering this stuff up. So they know about it. They've just managed to keep it hidden for decades. So Jim Key knew. Jim Key knew that children had been raped by Unitarian Universalist clergy. Jim